Okay, in this module we're going to learn about networks, the internet, and also show you an activity that you can do in the classroom. So, what is the internet? It's a worldwide computer network that connects and exchanges data between all sorts of different computing devices like laptops and mobile phones. It's made up of totally independent networks that are distributed, so there's no central control system for the internet. The reason that there's no one control center for the internet is that the system was designed to be robust enough to survive a global catastrophe and enable communication. So, network, it consists of two things. So let's take the first part, the word net. Now, if you imagine any kind of net that you might be familiar with, like the net in a soccer goal, a hair net, a fishing net. So these are long strands of material which cross over and they form a bigger shape. And a computer network's very similar, but instead of strands of fiber, we've got strands of copper wire, we've got fiber optic cables, and we've also got wireless radio signals. So all of these things cross over, and the points at which these copper wires and fiber optic cables cross over, they're our computing devices. So they would be our mobile phones, laptops, and any other kind of device which sits on the internet. So each one of these devices that's connected to the internet are in constant communication with each other. And that's really the function of the network. It's to enable data to be sent and to be received. And so that takes us to the second part of the word, work. The work that's done over this network is that of making requests for data and receiving data in return. So how does that work? If I'm sitting on my computer at home and I want to find an image on the internet, that image is located on another computing device, which could be anywhere in the world. If I wanted to look at that image, my computer would send a request to the computing device where that image is located, and this request is sent in something which is called a packet. A packet is a virtual parcel, and it's got lots of information in it. The most important one is something called the IP address. Now, an IP address is a little bit like your home address. It's the actual location of the computer that's storing the information, and without it, the internet quite simply wouldn't work. There are special computers all across the network, and these are called routers or switches, and these devices actually direct the packet of information so it navigates its way through the network to get to the correct destination. So the packet of information would travel from my computer where I'm making the request, and it could go by various means. It might travel via a fiber optic cable which runs underneath the ocean. It might actually go via satellite through space. There are lots of different paths that that packet can actually take to reach its destination. The packets have left my machine, they've traveled across the network, and they've now reached the machine that's hosting the image. So that machine will take the packets, it will read the request, which basically says, please send me this image. If we take that image that's sitting on this web server, images can quite often be very large, and it's not a very good idea to send very, very big pieces of information across the network. So big bits of information get broken down into small bits. So the web server that hosts the image will split that image up into lots and lots of tiny packets, and then it will send them back to my computer along with instructions which tell my computer how to put those separate bits of information back together again. So the packets leave the web server, and once again they'll travel through the network, and they will take all sorts of different routes. The routers and switches, which control the way the packets move through the network, might send them in all sorts of different directions, always looking for the fastest, most efficient ways to get the packets back to my machine. and they probably won't reach my machine in the same order that they left the web server it came from. Once my machine's received all of the packets of information, they will all come with instructions for my computer as to how to reassemble them to remake that image. Although this is a really complex process, the whole thing actually can take less than a second to achieve. So an IP address consists of a set of numbers that looks like this. So switches are devices which connect together different devices. So if you've got 3 computers in your home, you will have a switch or a simpler device, sometimes called a hub, which actually connects those devices together. Routers are smart devices. Now, routers are the things which actually direct these packets of information across the network. So when a router receives a packet of information, it will read the IP address and it will send that packet of information along the best route so it gets to its destination in the shortest possible time. Now, IP addresses are numeric, and it's actually very difficult for people to remember them. They're like phone numbers, except much more complicated. We have a thing called DNS, the Domain Name System. This is the system which turns the hard to remember numerical information in an IP address into the more easily remembered naming system, which makes the internet much easier for us. So for example, at the MindLab, our domain address is themindlab.com.